On September 23, 2017, a specific astronomical alignment occurred in the sky above Jerusalem. The sun was in the constellation Virgo. The moon was beneath Virgo's feet. Above Virgo's head were 9 stars from the constellation Leo plus 3 planets, Mercury, Mars, and Venus, creating a crown of 12 stars. And Jupiter, which had been in retrograde motion inside Virgo for approximately 9 months, was positioned at the point corresponding to the womb. Millions of people watched it happen. Millions of people said it was the sign of Revelation chapter 12. They were looking at the right chapter, but most of them were reading the wrong verse. Because Revelation chapter 12 does not begin with a sign in the sky, it begins with a woman. And the sign that most prophecy teachers skip, the one sitting in plain sight in verse 1 that unlocks the meaning of everything else in the chapter, was not visible on September 23, 2017. It had already happened 2,000 years ago. Before this investigation ends, you will understand why Revelation 12 is not primarily a prophecy about the future. It is a compressed account of what already occurred. The birth, the persecution, the rescue, and the ongoing war that began before any human being was born and has not yet ended. And once you see what the chapter is actually describing, you will never read it the same way again. Revelation chapter 12, verse 1. And a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. Verse 2. She was pregnant and was crying out in birth pains and the agony of giving birth. The identity of the woman is the interpretive key to the entire chapter. Get it wrong and everything else follows wrongly. There are 3 main interpretations. The first is that the woman is Mary, the mother of Jesus. This reading has a long history in Catholic tradition, and the details are not without support. A woman who gives birth to a male child who will rule all nations with a rod of iron, that language connects directly to Jesus. Mary gave birth to Jesus. The sun and moon and 12 stars have been interpreted as symbols of her exalted status. But this reading runs into a problem in verse 6 and verses 13 through 17, where the woman flees into the wilderness and is pursued by the dragon for 1,260 days, and is given the wings of a great eagle to be protected. Mary was not pursued by the dragon for 1,260 days. Mary was not given eagle wings and hidden in the wilderness. The woman in the second half of the chapter is not Mary. The second interpretation is that the woman represents the church, the community of believers across history who give birth to witness and are persecuted for it. This reading accounts for the second half of the chapter well. The church has been pursued, the church has been given protection in various forms, the church has endured for the period described. But the church did not give birth to Jesus. The church was created by Jesus, not the other way around. The third interpretation, and the one with the strongest textual support across the whole chapter, is that the woman represents Israel. The symbolism of sun, moon, and 12 stars is not invented by Revelation. It comes directly from Genesis chapter 37, verse 9. Joseph's dream, in which the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed to him. Jacob interpreted the dream immediately. Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you? Sun, moon, and stars equals Jacob and his wives and his sons, the family that became the 12 tribes of Israel. John takes that image from Genesis and places it in Revelation. The woman clothed with the sun with 12 stars on her head is Israel, the covenant people through whom the Messiah came. Israel gave birth to Jesus. Israel was then persecuted by Rome and the nations. Israel was scattered into a wilderness of diaspora for a period the text measures in symbolic terms. And Israel, the woman, is the ongoing target of the dragon's rage in the second half of the chapter. This reading holds the entire chapter together from beginning to end without requiring different identities for the woman in the first half and the second half. She is Israel throughout. And once that is established, the sign of verse 1 takes on a meaning that goes far beyond any astronomical alignment. Verse 3. And another sign appeared in heaven, behold, a great red dragon, with 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his heads 7 diadems. Verse 4. His tail swept down a third of the stars of heaven and cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman who was about to give birth, so that when she bore her child he might devour it. The dragon is identified explicitly later in the chapter. Verse 9. And the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent, who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. The ancient serpent. The same serpent from Genesis chapter 3 who spoke to Eve in the garden. John is connecting the beginning of the Bible to the middle of his vision. The same being, the same opposition, the same intent. And what is the dragon's intent? To devour the child the moment he is born. This is not metaphorical language about spiritual opposition. It is a direct reference to a specific historical event that Matthew chapter 2 records with full historical detail. Herod the Great, the Roman appointed king of Judea, a man of enormous political power and paranoid violence, was told by the wise men that a king of the Jews had been born. He asked the chief priests and scribes where the Messiah was to be born. They told him Bethlehem. He told the wise men to report back when they found the child. When the wise men did not return, Herod ordered the massacre of all male children in Bethlehem, 2 years old and under. The dragon standing before the woman, about to give birth, ready to devour the child, that is Herod at Bethlehem. The political power of Rome, animated by the spiritual opposition of the ancient serpent, positioned to destroy the Messiah at the moment of his vulnerability. And it failed. Because an angel warned Joseph in a dream, and the family fled to Egypt, the dragon's first attempt to devour the child failed. Verse 5, she gave birth to a male child, one who is to rule all the nations with a rod of iron, but her child was caught up to God and to his throne. The male child is Jesus. The language of ruling all nations with a rod of iron comes from Psalm chapter 2, verse 9. A psalm explicitly identified in the New Testament as messianic. Acts chapter 13, verse 33 quotes Psalm 2 and applies it directly to the resurrection of Jesus. Hebrews chapter 1, verse 5 quotes Psalm 2 in the context of the Son's exaltation. Revelation itself uses the rod of iron language 3 more times in reference to Jesus and to those who share in his authority. The male child of Revelation 12 is unambiguously Jesus. And the catching up to God and to his throne, in Greek the word is harpazo, the same word Paul uses in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 17, for what most Christians call the rapture, refers to the ascension. Jesus, after the resurrection, was caught up to God and to his throne. Acts chapter 1, verses 9 through 11 describes the ascension. As they were looking on, he was lifted up, and a cloud took him out of their sight. The catching up in Revelation 12, verse 5 is the ascension, not a future event, an event that already happened. Approximately 30 AD, 40 days after the resurrection, witnessed by the disciples on the Mount of Olives. The dragon tried to devour the child. The child was born, lived, died, rose, and was caught up to the throne of God. The dragon's primary objective? Destroy the Messiah before he could accomplish the redemption, failed completely. Verse 5 compresses the entire life, death, resurrection, and ascension of Jesus into a single sentence. Because the point of the chapter is not to narrate the life of Jesus. The point is to show what the failure of the dragon's primary objective set in motion. Verses 7 through 9, now war arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon. And the dragon and his angels fought back, but he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. There was a war in heaven. The dragon lost. He was thrown down to the earth. When did this happen? The chapter's structure gives the answer. The war in heaven follows the catching up of the child to God and his throne in verse 5. The catching up is the ascension. The war in heaven follows the ascension. Jesus himself appears to place this war in heaven at the time of his ministry. John chapter 12, verse 31. Now is the judgment of this world. Now will the ruler of this world be cast out. And I, when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself. The ruler of this world cast out. The cross and the ascension as the mechanism of the dragon's expulsion from heaven. Luke chapter 10, verse 18. Jesus said to the 72 who returned from their mission, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Colossians chapter 2, verse 15. He disarmed the rulers and authorities and put them to open shame by triumphing over them in the cross. The New Testament consistently places the defeat and expulsion of the dragon at the cross and resurrection, not at a future tribulation period. Revelation 12 is not describing a future war in heaven. It is showing John in visionary form what the cross and ascension accomplished in the heavenly realm. The dragon lost his standing in heaven. He was cast to the earth. And verse 12 records the consequence. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil has come down to you in great wrath, because he knows that his time is short. The dragon's wrath on earth is intensified precisely because he has been defeated in heaven. He knows his time is short. He cannot win the war. But he has not yet been finally destroyed. And so he turns his rage on the next best target. Verse 6. And the woman fled into the wilderness, where she has a place prepared by God, in which she is to be nourished for 1,260 days. The woman, Israel, flees into the wilderness. God has prepared a place for her. She is nourished there for 1,260 days. The number 1,260 appears multiple times in Revelation and in Daniel, always in the context of a period of intense tribulation and divine protection. 1,260 days equals 42 months equals 3.5 years. Half of 7, the number of completion. It is a symbolic number drawn directly from Daniel chapter 7, verse 25, where the little horn is given dominion for a time, times, and half a time. The same 3.5 years expressed differently. The question that has divided interpreters for centuries is simple. Is this 1,260 days a literal future period, or is it a symbolic number describing the entire era between the ascension and the return? The futurist reading says 1,260 days is a literal 3.5 years immediately before the return of Christ, the second half of a 7-year tribulation period when Israel will flee into the wilderness from the Antichrist. The preterist reading says 1,260 days refers to the period of the Jewish-Roman War of 66 to 70 AD, when the Jewish Christians in Jerusalem famously fled to Pella in the Transjordan Mountains, escaping the destruction of Jerusalem by the Roman army. The historicist reading says 1,260 days uses the day-year principle. One prophetic day equals one calendar year, making 1,260 years a symbolic period describing the entire church age or a specific era within it. Each reading has serious scholars defending it and serious objections against it. What all three readings agree on is the character of the period. It is a period of wilderness, not comfort, not victory in the conventional sense, but survival. The woman is not triumphant during the 1,260 days. She is protected. There is a significant difference. Triumphant means winning by conventional measures, political power, military victory, cultural dominance. Protected means surviving what was designed to destroy you, sustained by a provision you did not generate yourself. God prepared the place, God provided the nourishment. The woman contributed nothing except her presence. She fled, and she stayed where she was sent. This is the character of Israel's existence across the centuries of diaspora. Not triumphant by the world's measures, scattered among the nations, persecuted repeatedly by powers that tried to eliminate her, and yet surviving every attempt at her destruction. No other ethnic or national group that was scattered from its homeland over 2,000 years ago still exists as a recognizable people with a continuous identity. The woman in the wilderness is protected against all odds, against all precedent, against every historical pattern. She survives. Verses 10 through 12 contain one of the most significant theological declarations in the entire book of Revelation. And I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, Now the salvation and the power and the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brothers has been thrown down, who accuses them day and night before our God. the accuser.
This is Satan's role in the heavenly court.
The same role he plays in the book of Job, where he stands before God and accuses Job. He accuses them day and night before our God. The language is legal, the heavenly realm is depicted as a court, and the dragon has access to that court as a prosecuting attorney, bringing accusations against human beings before God. And now verse 10 announces, the accuser has been thrown down. The legal standing the dragon had in heaven has been revoked. He can no longer bring accusations before God's throne. Why not? Verse 11, and they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, for they loved not their lives even unto death. The blood of the Lamb, the cross, the mechanism by which the accuser lost his legal standing is the atonement. When Jesus died and rose, the basis on which the accuser could bring charges against human beings before God was removed. The debt was paid, the charges were settled. The accuser has no valid case to bring. Romans chapter 8 verses 33 through 34. Who shall bring any charge against God's elect? It is God who justifies. Who is to condemn? Christ Jesus is the one who died. More than that, who was raised, who is at the right hand of God, who indeed is interceding for us. Who shall bring any charge? The answer implied by Romans 8 and stated explicitly in Revelation 12 is the same. The accuser has been thrown down. The blood of the Lamb silenced the prosecution. And verse 12 immediately follows with the consequence. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe to you, O earth and sea, for the devil has come down to you in great wrath, because he knows that his time is short. The heavens rejoice because the accuser is gone from them. The earth receives the warning because the accuser, having lost his standing in heaven, has redirected all his energy to the earth. His wrath is great precisely because it is desperate. He knows his time is short. A defeated enemy with a countdown timer is more dangerous in some ways than a confident enemy at full strength. He has nothing left to lose and everything to spend before the end arrives. Verses 13 through 14. And when the dragon saw that he had been thrown down to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. But the woman was given the two wings of the great eagle, so that she might fly from the serpent into the wilderness, to the place where she is to be nourished for a time, and times, and half a time. The dragon pursues the woman. Having failed to destroy the child, having lost the war in heaven, the dragon turns his full attention to the woman who produced the child. If he cannot destroy the Messiah, he will attempt to destroy the people through whom the Messiah came. And the woman is given the two wings of the great eagle. The eagle imagery in the Hebrew scriptures is not random. Exodus chapter 19 verse 4. You yourselves have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Deuteronomy chapter 32 verse 11. Like an eagle that stirs up its nest, that flutters over its young, spreading out its wings, catching them, bearing them on its pinions, the Lord alone guided him. The two wings of the great eagle in Revelation 12 are a direct echo of the Exodus imagery. The same God who bore Israel on eagle wings out of Egypt is bearing Israel on eagle wings through the wilderness of the diaspora. The protective mechanism is divine. It is not Israel's own strength. It is not any human political arrangement. It is the same wings that carried a slave people out of the most powerful empire of the ancient world. And the destination is the same, the wilderness, a place of provision without abundance, survival without triumph, sustained by God's direct intervention rather than human achievement. The time and times and half a time in verse 14 is the same period as the 1,260 days in verse 6, expressed in Daniel's language rather than Revelation's numerical language. The repetition is deliberate. The same period of wilderness protection is described twice, from two slightly different angles, to emphasize that what is happening to the woman is not accidental or uncontrolled. It is precisely measured, precisely provided, and precisely bounded. The wilderness has a duration. It will end. Verse 15. The serpent poured water like a river out of his mouth after the woman, to sweep her away with a flood. Verse 16. But the earth came to the help of the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed the river that the dragon had poured from his mouth. The dragon could not devour the child. The dragon could not win the war in heaven. The dragon could not keep the woman from being carried to the wilderness on eagle wings. Now he tries a different weapon. A river from his mouth. Not fire, not a sword, a river of water. The imagery of water as a weapon against Israel is ancient in the Hebrew scriptures. Psalm chapter 18, verse 4. The cords of death encompassed me, the torrents of destruction assailed me. Psalm chapter 69, verse 1. Save me, O God, for the waters have come up to my neck. Isaiah chapter 43, verse 2. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and through the rivers they shall not overwhelm you. What the serpent pours from his mouth is not a literal flood of water. It is the thing water represents in the Hebrew poetic tradition, overwhelming force designed to sweep away and drown. The dragon's weapon here is not violence directly applied. It is the indirect force of nations, powers, and historical currents directed against Israel to overwhelm and eliminate her. The expulsions, the pogroms, the inquisitions, the systematic persecutions across every century of the diaspora, each one an attempt to sweep away the woman with the flood of the dragon's mouth. And each time, verse 16 records, the earth came to the help of the woman. The earth, not heaven directly, not miraculous intervention in the obvious sense, but the earth opened its mouth and swallowed the river, sometimes through the intervention of a sympathetic ruler, sometimes through the failure of a persecution to achieve its intended total elimination, sometimes through events that had nothing to do with Israel's situation, but redirected the force that was aimed at her. The earth swallows the dragon's river, not because the earth loves Israel, because God prepared the place and God provides the protection, and sometimes the mechanism of that protection looks like geopolitics, and sometimes it looks like coincidence, and sometimes it looks like nothing at all from the outside. But the woman survives the river, every time. Verse 17. Then the dragon became furious with the woman and went off to make war on the rest of her offspring, on those who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus. This verse is the bridge between the story of Israel and the story of the church. The rest of her offspring. The woman is Israel. The male child she bore is Jesus. The rest of her offspring, those who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus, are the people who follow Jesus. Gentile believers who have been grafted into the covenant through faith in Israel's Messiah. The church is not a separate entity from the woman. The church is the rest of the woman's offspring, children born from the same covenant family, through the same Messiah, carrying both the commandments of God and the testimony of Jesus. And the dragon makes war on both. On the woman, Israel, he pours the river. On the rest of her offspring, the church, he wages direct warfare. Revelation chapter 13 picks up immediately where chapter 12 ends, with the dragon standing on the sand of the sea, calling forth the beast and the false prophet to prosecute his war against the rest of the offspring. The war the dragon wages against the church in Revelation 13 and beyond is the continuation of the same war he has been waging since Genesis chapter 3, against the woman and her seed, the seed that would crush his head. Genesis chapter 3, verse 15. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. Revelation 12 is the fulfillment of Genesis 3:15 shown in visionary form. The woman, the serpent, the offspring, the bruising of the heel, the cross, the crushing of the head, the war in heaven, the expulsion, the final destruction that is still ahead. The entire arc from the garden to the throne room is compressed into 22 verses. And the dragon's current activity, making war on those who keep the commandments of God and hold to the testimony of Jesus, is not a future tribulation scenario. It is the present reality of every believer in every generation since the ascension. The war is ongoing. The dragon is on the earth. His time is short. And the rest of the offspring are the people he is most actively targeting right now. Pull back and read the chapter as a complete unit. A woman, Israel, clothed with cosmic glory, pregnant with the Messiah. A dragon, Satan, positioned to devour the child the moment he is born. The child is born. The dragon fails to devour him. The child is caught up to God and his throne, the ascension. War breaks out in heaven. The dragon is defeated and expelled. The dragon, now on the earth, pursues the woman with full force. The woman is given eagle wings and carried to the wilderness, protected for a measured period. The dragon pours a river from his mouth. The earth swallows it. The dragon, furious, turns his war on the rest of the woman's offspring, those who hold to the testimony of Jesus. That is the chapter. It is not primarily a prophecy about a future 7-year tribulation. It is a compressed, visionary account of the entire spiritual history of the world from the birth of the Messiah to the present moment, told from the perspective of the heavenly realm rather than the earthly one. The astronomical alignment of September 23, 2017 may or may not be significant. It was a striking visual correspondence with the imagery of verse 1. But the sign of verse 1 is not the chapter's primary concern. The chapter's primary concern is the war, where it came from, what it costs, who is fighting it, and what the outcome will be. And the chapter's answer to that last question is given not at the end, but in the middle, in verse 11. They conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, for they loved not their lives even unto death. The dragon has been defeated. The accuser has been thrown down. The basis of his accusations has been removed by the blood of the Lamb. The rest of the offspring, the people holding to the testimony of Jesus in every generation, are not waiting for a victory that has not yet come. They are living in the aftermath of a victory that has already been won in heaven, working out its consequences on earth until the short time the dragon has remaining finally runs out. Revelation chapter 12 has a sign everyone skips. It is not in the sky. It is in the structure of the chapter itself. The sign is this: the war the dragon is waging against you right now is a war he has already lost. He knows it. He is fighting with the desperation of a defeated enemy who knows his time is short. And the people the chapter describes as having conquered him are not the ones with the most power or the most resources or the most sophisticated theological systems. They are the ones who held to the testimony of Jesus and loved not their lives even unto death. That is the sign Revelation chapter 12 has been hiding in plain sight for 2,000 years. It already happened. The victory was won at the cross. What remains is not the outcome. What remains is the working out of that outcome. Until the short time ends, the dragon is finally bound, and the woman and her offspring are no longer in the wilderness.